Barack Obama didn't raise his voice. He simply read a few lines from a buried report, and within minutes Donald Trump was fuming on the White House lawn in a scene that replayed endlessly across the world. Inside the Washington studio, the atmosphere was tense, though no one could have imagined the storm about to break. It was prime time, and millions of Americans sat in their living rooms, from Fresno to Pittsburgh, waiting to hear what the nation's first black president would say about the current administration. Obama sat across from the interviewer, his posture relaxed, his expression calm, no showy gestures, no dramatic delivery, just quiet confidence. Then came the question, direct, simple, and heavy. Mr. President, how do you feel about the way Donald Trump has handled this office? The interviewer leaned forward, the camera zoomed in, and the nation held its breath. Obama paused only briefly, offered a small, thoughtful smile, and reached under his chair. From a stack of papers, he slid one across the table as casually as if passing a note. But the words on the page were explosive. This report, he said, evenly was filed by the Government Accountability Office 3 months ago. Most people haven't seen it because it was buried in federal archives. But if you look closely, you'll see billions of dollars redirected to projects tied directly to the Trump organization. The interviewer froze. Viewers leaned closer. This wasn't opinion, it was fact. Obama read two paragraphs aloud, his voice steady and measured. The numbers landed like punches. $2.6 billion for luxury properties, nearly $1 billion for overseas golf ventures, and secret tax breaks funneled through shell companies connected to Trump's family business. The silence afterward was deafening. Obama didn't rant or raise his voice. He set the paper down, folded his hands, and simply said, leadership isn't about using public service isn't about enriching yourself. Obama continued calmly, it's about sacrifice. It's about putting others first. Almost instantly, phones lit up across the country. Twitter exploded, clips were edited, captions added, and hashtags were born. CNN broke in with a headline, while Fox News producers rushed to cut the segment for their evening shows. The story didn't just spread fast, it took over everything on screen. Obama's expression stayed steady, precise, and unbothered. He wasn't trying to argue, he simply let the facts speak for themselves. In Texas suburbs, families froze at the dinner table. In a Detroit bar, people turned toward the muted TV, reading captions in disbelief. In Oregon, college students live-streamed their stunned reactions, shouting about the drop. Heard around the country, reactions split quickly. Trump supporters raged, calling it a cheap political attack. This is just politics. A caller shouted into a late-night radio show in Iowa. For others, it was confirmation of long-held suspicions. I knew something like this was happening, a mother of 3 said outside a Tulsa supermarket. Whatever the opinion, the moment was unforgettable. Leaning back with that same half-smile, Obama listened as the interviewer asked, do you think this could affect the presidency? Obama tilted his head slightly. The truth always affects leadership, he said. Sometimes right away, sometimes later. But it always comes back. That line was clipped and replayed as often as the report itself. His calm tone and deliberate phrasing carried the weight of a teacher reminding students that the test was tomorrow. It struck a chord nationwide. Meanwhile, chaos erupted inside the White House. Phones rang, aides shouted, and advisors scrambled to spin the story. But it was too late. The clip had already escaped their control. What began as politics had turned into a study of character. One man quietly presenting evidence, the other on the verge of eruption. In the studio, the tension eased into polite conversation between Obama and the interviewer. Outside, though, the shockwaves were only just beginning. As Trump watched the same clip inside the White House, the network cut to a commercial, but phones were buzzing in newsrooms from Phoenix to Boston. Editors shouted orders, producers scrambled to grab the clip before it disappeared into the endless flood of online content, and anchors whispered into their earpieces, bracing for what was coming. What stood out wasn't just what Obama said, but how he said it. He didn't yell, point fingers, or sound like someone with a grudge. His tone was steady, like a parent reading from a rulebook that had always been there, reminding everyone of the standards they were supposed to follow. Viewers felt the difference instantly. In Spokane, a retired teacher texted her daughter, "This is what leadership looks like at a Phoenix diner," to construction workers argued across the counter. He made it up. One insisted, "No way he read it straight from the report." The other fired back. Even people who normally ignored politics were replaying the clip on their phones, sharing it in group chats, whispering, "Wow, he really just did that." Obama's calm tone gave weight to every word. It wasn't emotional, it was sharp, deliberate. People sensed something bigger, a man no longer in power, with nothing to prove, yet still carrying himself like someone who had once held the same office Trump now did. That mattered. Online, the reaction split, hashtags praising Obama clashed. With ones defending Trump, memes spread like wildfire. One showed Obama sipping tea with the caption, "When you drop billions with receipts." Another pasted Trump's face on Monopoly money. But the most telling response came from seasoned reporters. A veteran journalist from the Dallas Morning News tweeted, "I've covered both men. This wasn't spin, it was facts against fury, and one looks stronger every minute this plays." Inside the White House, tension rose. A staffer carrying coffee overheard two advisors outside the Oval Office. "He can't just ignore it," one hissed. "He has to. If he responds, he gives it. Oxygen, it already has oxygen, it's everywhere," the other snapped. The clash between silence and outrage was brewing, and Trump had never been one to stay quiet. Meanwhile, Obama's interview continued. The host, clearly unsettled, tried shifting to lighter questions, but the mood in the studio had changed. Political analysts, students, and community leaders sat frozen in their seats, fully locked on what they had just witnessed. As the room processed what had just unfolded, a young woman in the audience leaned toward her friend and whispered, "He just said what everyone was thinking, but he proved it." Obama didn't gloat, didn't follow with fiery attacks. Instead, he shifted smoothly. At the end of the day, he said, "The presidency is about trust. If people don't believe you're serving them and not yourself, then you've already lost what keeps democracy alive." It was the kind of line that could live in a textbook, simple, universal, almost timeless. For millions watching, it felt like a breath of stability, as if someone had finally put a steady hand on the wheel after years of turbulence. Parents nodded quietly, veterans sat straighter, and even young voters, usually cynical about both parties, shared the clip with comments like, "This feels different." But the calm that reassured so many Americans had the opposite effect inside the Trump administration. Advisors knew the president wasn't the type to stay silent. Every moment without a response made him more restless. Outside, reporters crowded near the White House gates, cameras primed. They didn't know when, but they knew an eruption was inevitable. Inside, the pressure was already boiling. Less than 15 minutes after the broadcast, the West Wing was in chaos. Staffers rushed down hallways with phones to their ears, voices raised, faces tense. The usual rhythm of meetings and memos was replaced by one obsession: how to counter what Obama had just unleashed. In the Roosevelt Room, senior aides huddled around a table cluttered with laptops and half-empty coffee cups. Televisions on the walls played the same loop, Obama's calm reading of the report. Even on mute, the captions scrolled damning words: $2.6 billion for luxury property developments, $1 billion overseas tax breaks tied to the Trump Organization. Kellyanne Conway leaned forward, voice sharp. "We need to push back now. We can't let this narrative set. He's making it sound like the president is stealing from taxpayers." Across from her, Jared Kushner shook his head. "The problem is the numbers are real. The report exists. If we deny it, fact checkers will have it in seconds." Another aide snapped, his voice rising. "So what? Deny it anyway. That's the playbook." People don't read fact checks, they remember the headline. The argument spiraled, frustration mounting. One staffer threw his hands up and muttered, "This is a disaster." Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, Donald Trump sat in his chair. Trump sat in the Oval Office, clutching the remote, replaying the clip over and over. His face grew, redder each time. Look at him. Look at that smug smile. He snapped. He thinks he's so smart. They love him. They eat this up because they hate me. This is treason. A staffer tried to steady him. Mr. President, with respect, it's not treason, it's just an interview. We can draft a response. Trump slammed the remote onto the desk. Response. I'll give them a response. Put me in front of the cameras. I'll tear him apart. Nobody exposes me, nobody. But not everyone agreed. In the press office, communications director Hope Hicks whispered to her deputy, "If he goes live without a script, it'll get worse." The deputy whispered back, "Then stop him." She glanced toward the Oval Office door. "You stop him." Outside, the chaos was spreading. News vans lined the streets, reporters frantically calling sources to verify Obama's claims. A junior aide who had worked in the budget office texted a journalist friend, "Everything he said checks out. It's in the report, I saw it." Within an hour, that message fueled a breaking news story. The narrative wasn't dying, it was multiplying. In the press briefing room, seats filled quickly. The press secretary, pale and anxious, shuffled her notes again and again. A hot mic caught one reporter whispering, "This feels like one of those nights where everything changes." Another muttered back, "Or one where everything burns down." Back in the Oval Office, Trump's fury only deepened. He barked at his chief of staff, "Get the generals on the phone. I want to know who's leaking this garbage. Obama's in bed with them, they're sabotaging me." "Sir," the chief of staff said quietly, "this isn't sabotage, it's a public report." Trump's glare cut him off. "Don't you dare say that word. Sabotage, that's what it is." The room went still. Aides exchanged uneasy glances, careful not to move or breathe too loudly. In that silence, the reality sank in. Less than 200 words from Obama had cracked open the administration's foundation. Trump wanted revenge. His staff wanted damage control. The public wanted answers, and hanging over it all was one certainty: Trump would not let this pass quietly. By late afternoon, the tension broke. Reporters outside noticed the shift. Secret Service officers adjusting earpieces, staffers rushing between doors, a ripple of movement cutting across the lawn. Then they saw him, Donald Trump, striding toward the cameras. No notes, no talking points, just the president, red-faced, ready to explode. Trump's jaw was tight, his body coiled like a spring, when the first question cut through the noise. "Mr. President, do you have a response to Barack Obama's comments?" A CNN correspondent shouted. He didn't pause. He jabbed a finger at the wall of microphones. "That man is a disgrace, a total disgrace. He goes on TV spreading lies, trying to look good because he couldn't handle the job anymore. Everybody knows it, everybody." His voice grew louder with each word. Cameras clicked, reporters scribbled, the moment crackling with tension. There was no money redirected. "None," he roared. "It's fake news, completely fake. These so-called reports are written by people who hate me, who hate this country. They can't stand that I'm winning, that the economy is stronger, that jobs are back, that America is respected again. So they make up lies, and Obama, he reads it like scripture. Pathetic." A reporter from the Los Angeles Times pressed forward. "Mr. President, the Government Accountability Office released that report. Are you denying the document itself?" Trump leaned toward the microphones, his face inches away, his voice thundering. "I don't care who wrote it. If it's against me, it's wrong, period. You want accountability? Where was Obama's accountability when he spied on my campaign? Where was it when he left this country in ruins? He's bitter because I destroyed his legacy. That's all this is." Behind the cameras, aides exchanged panicked looks. Hope Hicks whispered to a staffer, "He's digging deeper. We'll be cleaning this up for weeks." But Trump wasn't finished. He stabbed the air with his finger, pacing like a man on trial. "This is the problem with our country. Losers like him, sore losers trying to tear down what we've built. And the media, oh, the media loves it. You love him. You love Obama. You hate me because I fight for the people. "You're disgusting." Some reporters froze, stunned, others pressed harder. "Mr. President, are you saying the numbers Obama read are fabricated?" "Yes," Trump barked, "totally fabricated. I don't know who put them there, but it's fake. Just like Russia, just like impeachment. It's all a scam." The exchange stretched nearly 20 minutes, far longer than anyone expected. Trump grew more agitated, hands slicing the air, his words tumbling into tirades about Hillary Clinton, the Mueller probe, even late-night comedians. The original question billions allegedly funneled into his businesses was buried under the avalanche. And that was the problem. For millions watching at home, the contrast couldn't have been starker. Just hours earlier, viewers had watched Obama sit calmly, reading carefully from an official report. Now they were seeing Trump, flushed and furious, his words spilling out like water from a broken hydrant. One moment in particular dominated the night's coverage. A reporter had asked, "Mr. President, if you have nothing to hide, why not release the documents to prove it?" Trump snapped back, "Because I don't owe you anything. I don't owe the American people anything except winning, and I'm winning more than anyone has ever won before." That line hit like a slap. Not owe the American people anything. Within minutes, the 5-second clip spread across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, stripped down to raw anger. Even seasoned journalists in the press corps were stunned. One leaned toward a colleague and whispered, "That wasn't a statement, that was a meltdown." When Trump finally stormed off, aides scrambled. One advisor insisted to reporters the president was passionate, not angry. He's focused on fighting misinformation, but no one bought it. The footage spoke louder than spin. Across diners, living rooms, and workplaces, the comparisons began. Did you see Obama? Did you see Trump? One looked like a leader. The other looked out of control. By morning, the fallout had moved beyond headlines. It was alive in everyday conversations. In a diner outside Dayton, two truck drivers argued over untouched plates of scrambled eggs. "That report's real," one insisted, stabbing the table with his fork. "Obama didn't make it up, he read it word for word." His friend shook his head. "It's theater. He's slick with words. Trump's the only one fighting for guys like us." "You think Obama cares about truck drivers?" The waitress refilling their coffee muttered just loud enough. At least Obama didn't scream like a toddler on live TV. Both men fell silent, but neither changed his mind. In Phoenix, the barbershop TVS replayed the clips non-stop. Customers debated between fades and trims, their eyes glued to the screens. "Man, did you see the way Trump jabbed his finger at the cameras? That wasn't strength, that was panic," one barbershop customer muttered. Another shot back, "Nah, that's how you fight. He's showing he won't be pushed around." Obama reads a paper and suddenly he's a saint? Please, the barber, clippers buzzing in his hand, smirked. Doesn't matter which side you're on, everyone remembers one thing. Obama looked calm, Trump looked mad. That's the image people will carry. In Des Moines, college students crowded into a dorm lounge, laptops open, streaming reactions. "Liv, this feels like history," one said. 10 years from now, we'll be telling people where we were when Obama dropped that." Another chimed in, laughing, "And where we were when Trump lost it right after." It wasn't just young voices. In a Tulsa church basement, retirees lingered over weak coffee after Bible study. "I voted for Trump," one woman admitted, "but I didn't like what I saw last night. He looked rattled." Leaders shouldn't look rattled. Across the room, a loyal supporter fired back. "He's human. He's angry because they're all against him." Obama set him up. The debate split the room, tempers rising. Even friendships strained. Talk radio lit up. In Reno, a Vietnam veteran's gravelly voice cut through the static. "I don't care who you support, you don't tell the American people you don't owe them anything." That's not what a president says. Minutes later, a caller from Lubbock snapped back. "Obama owes us plenty for the mess he left. Trump's right to be angry." "I'd be angry too." Late-night shows piled on. One host replayed the clips. Side by side, Obama's steady reading, Trump's shouting before landing the punchline. It's like watching the teacher calmly explain the test rules while the class clown flips the desk. The audience roared, but the laughter couldn't blunt the weight of what had happened. At the same time, families struggled to explain it to their kids. In Milwaukee, a father described his 12-year-old daughter asking why the president seemed so angry. "I didn't know what to say," he admitted. "I just told her some people lead by example, and others lead by yelling." The divide was unmistakable. To some, Obama's calm was wisdom, to others, arrogance. To some, Trump's theory showed strength, to others, weakness. But everyone agreed on one thing: they couldn't look away. The nation was locked in a conversation that felt personal, unlike most political stories. By lunchtime the next day, hashtags were still trending. Clips flooded Instagram reels. TikTok edits set Obama's steady delivery against dramatic music. Trump's outburst quickly became internet fodder. His rant was chopped into parody songs, his finger-pointing synths to pop beats, his shouting turned into memes. People laughed, but beneath the humor was a serious question Americans were asking themselves: what kind of leader do we really want? If the public was divided, the media only poured fuel on the fire. By the time evening newscasts aired, every major network framed the day as one defining contrast: Obama's calm precision versus Trump's raw fury. Split screens filled living rooms across the country. Obama sitting upright, voice steady, reading from airport on one side. Trump red-faced, waving his hands, shouting into microphones on the other. Producers couldn't resist looping the clips back to back. Calm words, angry rebuttal; calm words, furious explosion. Even viewers flipping for sports or sitcoms couldn't escape it. On MSNBC, analysts dissected every frame. "This isn't just about numbers," one argued. "It's a boot impairment." Side by side, Obama looks presidential. Trump looks rattled, another added. "The contrast tells the story better than any of us could." Fox News, meanwhile, leaned hard in the opposite direction. A host glared into the camera. "This is what they want you to believe, that bureaucrats are above your president." Obama is cherry-picking lines to embarrass Donald Trump. Don't fall for it. Still, even some conservative commentators couldn't ignore the optics. A longtime Republican strategist admitted, grimacing, like it or not, Trump didn't help himself today. He gave them exactly what they wanted. The next morning, newspapers told this same divided story. The Washington Post splashed a headline: "Obama drops facts, Trump drops fury." The Wall Street Journal was more restrained. "Former president sparks controversy with report." White House denies allegations. The Boston Globe didn't hold back. Obama calm, Trump explodes. Online, the clips dominated feeds. TikTok edits set Obama's steady delivery against soothing background music. Captions declaring, "Leadership looks like this." In contrast, Trump's outburst became parody gold. One video, with his finger jabs synced perfectly to a pop track, racked up millions of views. The comedy spread, but the underlying reality was clear. His anger had drowned out any defense he tried to make. Cable shows leaned in. On CNN, an anchor spoke over looping shots of Trump pacing the lawn. In politics, image matters as much as policy. Yesterday, one image stood taller. A commentator beside him nodded gravely. Trump had always thrived on confrontation, but this time he was up against someone who refused to brawl back, and that contrast made him look smaller. Late-night comedians pounced. One host played Obama's calm statement, then cut to Trump shouting fake news at the top of his lungs. The punchline landed: "Ladies and gentlemen, that's the difference between your dad reading The Electric Bill and your uncle arguing at Thanksgiving." The audience howled, but beneath the laughter, the weight of the allegations grew heavier. Investigative reporters began digging into the very report Obama had cited. The Miami Herald published a detailed piece on an overseas golf project that lined up exactly with Obama's reading. The San Francisco Chronicle traced suspicious tax breaks to shell companies linked to Trump's family. What started as a viral clip was hardening into serious journalism. Newsrooms sensed blood. A senior producer at NBC was overheard telling his team, This isn't just a clip, it's the story of the year. Another editor barked into the phone. Get confirmation on those numbers. If they're right, this isn't commentary anymore, it's corruption. For everyday Americans, the whirlwind was dizzying. Obama's calm delivery was quickly elevated to near-legendary status, while Trump's rage seemed more chaotic each time it aired. The gap widened not because of what either man said afterward, but because of how the media framed the moment. And Trump knew it. Late that night, in the White House residence, he sat flipping channels in frustration. Every network had a panel discussing him, but not in the way he wanted. Every chyron painted the same picture: angry, defensive, unhinged. For a man who lived on image, that image was slipping. Meanwhile, Washington was bracing for its own fight. The morning after, lawmakers filled the halls of Capitol Hill, swarmed by reporters demanding answers. The same question echoed through every microphone. What's your response to what President Obama revealed? Republican allies tried to hold the line, but even they looked shaken. Senator Ronald Reagan of Indiana, usually a fiery defender, fidgeted with his tie before offering a shaky response. I think what the former president did was opportunistic. This is politics at its worst. But let's not pretend Barack Obama is some saint. He's had his own controversies, his words sounded thin, and reporters knew it. Moments later, Senator Marsha Evans of Oregon, one of Trump's loudest critics in his own party, didn't hesitate. I've seen the report, she said bluntly. Obama didn't exaggerate. Those numbers are real. If taxpayer dollars were funneled into private business ventures, that's not just unethical, it's criminal. We need hearings. Senator Evans' blunt words flashed across every news ticker, igniting the story further. Within an hour, the House of Representatives was in turmoil. Democrats began drafting letters demanding an investigation. Congresswoman Lillian Rhodes of California faced a swarm of reporters and declared, "This isn't partisan, this is about accountability. If even a fraction of that report is true, we're staring at a crisis of corruption at the very top." Republicans, meanwhile, huddled behind closed doors. A leaked account revealed the split inside. Half the room says deny everything. The other half says bury it in committee. No one has a plan. The shockwaves reached far beyond Washington. In Berlin, Chancellor Anke Hoffmann, asked about the drama, kept her tone careful. "What I saw was a contrast between two styles of leadership. Facts must always speak louder than emotion. Diplomatic, but clear." In London, a member of parliament joked during a debate, "It seems America now has two presidents on television, one presenting numbers, the other throwing tantrums." The chamber erupted in laughter, and the clip spread online. In Ottawa, Canada's Prime Minister avoided humor, but didn't hide concern. When public trust erodes, democracy suffers. Transparency is not optional, it's essential. Even adversaries joined in. A Russian state media commentator mocked Trump. Even his predecessor humiliates him on American television. This is weakness for the world to see. Chinese outlets, typically cautious, broadcast side-by-side comparisons of Obama's calm delivery and Trump's rage, framing it as proof of American instability. At home, former officials broke their silence. Retired generals appeared on cable news. One, General Stephen Marlowe, told CNN, "Leadership isn't about winning arguments, it's about composure under pressure." Obama showed it, Trump lost it, but loyalists pushed back. On right-wing talk shows, former aide Sebastian Clark thundered into a microphone, "Obama wants to weaken America. He's jealous of Trump's success. This is the deep state at work." Plain and simple. The defenses were loud, but they sounded like deflection. The tonal divide was striking. Obama stayed quiet, sticking to private events, declining all comment. His silence made his original words echo even louder. Trump's circle, meanwhile, seemed to exhaust itself trying to spin. On Capitol Hill, pressure mounted for hearings. Democrats plotted how to move fast. Republicans begged the White House for direction. One senator, caught by a hot mic, muttered, "We're bleeding support. If we don't get ahead of this, we're done and out in the country." ordinary Americans saw what they already believed reinforced. In an Albuquerque coffee shop, a woman lowered her paper and shook her head. Look at them, scrambling. One man just read a report, the other lost his mind. That's all you need to know, the woman in Albuquerque finished. And while politicians and world leaders lined up with their reactions, the buried numbers weren't fading. They were breaking wide open. It started with the Miami Herald. In bold black type, the front page declared, "Government records show billions redirected to Trump businesses." This wasn't speculation, it was a meticulous, step-by-step breakdown of the very pages Obama had read on live TV now, with even more sections highlighted and explained. Reporters had gone deeper, and the trail was undeniable. One passage stood out nationwide. Funds meant for infrastructure upgrades in Midwestern states had been funneled into construction contracts overseas, tied to Trump-branded golf resorts. Roads in Michigan remained cracked and crumbling. Bridges in Kansas were left half-finished. Meanwhile, fresh fairways gleamed thousands of miles away. By midday, more outlets piled on. The San Francisco Chronicle ran an exposed tracing shell. Companies linked to the Trump organization that had reclassified luxury properties as economic revitalization zones, raking in massive tax credits. The Philadelphia Inquirer revealed that a federally funded housing project had been halted when money vanished into unclear private allocations. The evidence was airtight. Scanned copies of the reports appeared online, posted to Twitter, and dissected by thousands of ordinary Americans. Teachers, truckers, accountants, people who had never cracked a government PDF before were scrolling line by line, pointing out discrepancies, sharing screenshots. The internet itself had become a watchdog. Cable news followed the shift. Where pundits had once debated optics, now analysts debated legality. On CNN, a legal expert bluntly explained, if taxpayer money was redirected into private ventures, that crosses into fraud and abuse of office. Fox News tried to dismiss it as partisan, but the documents circulating online made denial nearly impossible. Even friendly hosts looked uneasy. One admitted on air, "We're reviewing the documents ourselves. I urge caution, but yes, the numbers do look concerning." On Capitol Hill, the pressure cracked. The Senate Finance Committee announced an emergency review. A Republican senator, speaking anonymously to the Detroit Free Press, confessed, "We can't ignore this. Obama forced our hand, the report was buried, but now it's out." Frustration boiled over among the public. In Kansas City, residents packed a town hall demanding answers about the unfinished bridge cited in the Herald piece. A construction worker stood and shouted, "So our roads fall apart while the president builds golf courses overseas. That's our money, our sweat." The room erupted in applause. In Detroit, protesters held signs outside City Hall reading, "Fix our neighborhoods, not golf resorts." A mother, her young son at her side, told a local reporter, "My kid's school has leaking ceilings, and you're telling me billions went into luxury hotels? How is that America first?" the mother said. The scandal no longer felt abstract. It wasn't just numbers on a page, it was potholes, crumbling schools, frozen housing projects. People could see it, touch it, live it. Inside the White House, aides scrambled to control the narrative, but it was like trying to patch a sinking ship. Each day brought new leaks, each confirming more of the buried report. The louder Trump shouted fake news, the more undeniable the evidence became. His words burned like fire, but the documents sat like stone. One senior official was ambushed in a Capitol hallway, asked if the administration could prove the money was properly used. "We're reviewing the allocations," he stammered. The clip ran nonstop, looking less like reassurance and more like surrender. Obama, meanwhile, kept silent. No interviews, no statements. He didn't need to. The facts carried his voice for him. His calm delivery from that first interview had become immortalized. Each replay of his quiet words made Trump's fury look more reckless. By the weeks, and even some of Trump's lifelong supporters admitted the scandal stung. A farmer in Iowa told a local paper, "I don't like Obama, never did. But if the money that was supposed to fix our grain elevator ended up overseas, then yeah, that's corruption. The tipping point had arrived. What began as a clash of personalities had become a full-blown reckoning. Obama's quiet recital had opened a vault of secrets, and the flood was unstoppable. But as the scandal deepened, the emotional fallout between the two men and the nation watching was about to peak. Trump, who had always thrived on chaos, was finding that chaos now worked against him. For days, he raged on Twitter. The posts read less like presidential statements and more like personal vendettas. "Obama is a fraud," one all-caps tweet screamed. Another accused the Government Accountability Office of being run by left-wing traitors. By morning, those tweets were everywhere, splashed across tirades, dissected on cable panels, lampooned by late-night comedians, and fretted over by his own aides. Inside the White House residence, the atmosphere grew suffocating. Trump demanded every TV stay on, pacing in front of screens like a boxer waiting for the bell. Every replay of Obama's measured remarks pushed him closer to the edge. He'd slam the remote down and mutter, "They love him. They hate me. They've always hated me." A few allies tried to steady him. Senator Keating flew in from Indiana to meet face-to-face. In the Oval Office, the two men sat in heavy silence before Keating began carefully, "Mr. President, people just need to hear strength from you, not anger." "Strength," Senator Keating urged. Trump's eyes narrowed. "Strength is anger. People love when I fight. That's why I'm here. That's why I win." Keating hesitated, then spoke softly. "They loved it when you fought the media. They loved it when you fought the system. But now, it looks like you're fighting the truth." The word stung. Trump ended the meeting abruptly, but the warning echoed long after. Meanwhile, Obama's silence grew almost theatrical in its impact. Each day he declined to comment. The contrast sharpened. He didn't need to speak. The documents and Trump's rage were amplifying each other. Editorial boards noticed. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch called it a masterclass in leadership. By absence, the Seattle Times wrote, "Obama knows sometimes silence is louder than any speech." For everyday Americans, the fallout was deeply personal. In a Tulsa living room, a father explained to his teenage son, one man read the facts, the other lost his temper. Which one looks like he has nothing to hide? In an Amarillo diner, two veterans argued over coffee. One, a Trump loyalist, shook his head. "He's under attack." "I'd be angry too," the other, quieter, replied. "I've been under attack before." Anger doesn't get you through it, discipline does. That word discipline began slipping into the national conversation. Pundits repeated it, teachers explained it in classrooms. Pastors wove it into sermons. Obama had shown it. Trump had not. Then came the most damaging clip yet. During another impromptu press gaggle, Trump was asked if he had read the Gow report himself. His response, captured in crystal clarity, was blunt. "I don't need to read it. I know what's in it. It's lies." Within hours, the footage spread like wildfire. Commentators shook their heads. A president dismissing a report he hasn't read, that's not leadership. That's denial. Even loyalists began wavering. On conservative talk radio, a caller from Oklahoma admitted, "I voted for Trump twice, but this doesn't look good." You can't call it fake if you don't even look at it. Another, from rural Nebraska, pushed back. Doesn't matter. If he read it or not, the deep state is after him. Obama's just their puppet. The divide deepened, but cracks were showing where support had once been uncheckable. Inside the White House, the toll mounted. Staff grew weary, avoiding eye contact, speaking in clipped tones, knowing any wrong word could trigger a tirade. Reporters whispered about the loneliest man in Washington, a president increasingly isolated, surrounded by aides who no longer believed they could contain him. Obama, in stark contrast, appeared at a community fundraiser in Cleveland. He never mentioned the controversy directly, but his closing remark landed with force. Leadership isn't about the noise you make when you're cornered. It's about the choices you make when no one is watching. The crowd erupted. Clips of the line went viral overnight. Within hours, the comparison was impossible to ignore. Trump raging in Washington, Obama speaking softly in Ohio. One appeared consumed by bitterness, the other lifted by purpose. The debate was no longer just about politics, it was about character. Parents, workers, students, veterans all found themselves facing the same question: who looks more like a leader? As the scandal hit its boiling point, the conversation shifted. It wasn't only about who looked stronger, but about what lesson the country would take from the clash between calm truth and raging denial. When the dust finally began to settle, America found itself staring into a mirror. On one side was Barack Obama, no longer in office, armed only with a stack of papers and a steady voice. On the other stood Donald Trump, still the sitting president, wielding anger, volume, and defiance. The contrast was no longer just political, it had become a lesson in leadership itself. Conversations across the country reflected that change. In classrooms, teachers asked students what it meant to lead. An 8th grader in Albuquerque raised her hand. It means not yelling when people don't agree with you. In a Birmingham church, a pastor told his congregation, "True strength isn't how loud you shout, it's how steady you remain when the truth is on the table." At kitchen tables, parents used the moment as a lesson. A mother in Minneapolis explained it to her son. Imagine to coaches, one calmly shows you the rule book. The other screams at the referee, "Which one would you follow?" The boy didn't hesitate, the one with the rule book. The headlines also shifted. What began as wall-to-wall scandal coverage turned into broader reflection. The Denver Post ran an editorial titled, "The Calm versus the Storm: What We Learned." This week, it concluded simply, history doesn't remember tantrums. It remembers truth. For Trump, the fallout lingered. His defenders still rallied. His critics pressed harder, but the image was seared into memory. A president unraveling versus a former president calmly presenting receipts. No amount of spin could erase it. Obama, by contrast, said little more. He returned quietly to private life, appearing at small community events, speaking softly about education, climate, and voting rights. His silence became the lesson itself. Sometimes you don't need to shout, because the truth is already loud enough. The public absorbed that moment in different ways. Some grew furious, demanding answers about where the money had gone. Others felt weary, seeing the clash as another reminder of the country's deep divisions. But beneath the noise ran an unmistakable current of reflection. What kind of leader do we want? What kind of nation do we want to be? This story no longer belonged only to politicians or pundits, it belonged to ordinary people. They saw themselves in the contrast, the calm teacher versus the shouting boss, the honest coworker versus the blustering cheat, the friend who listens versus the one who interrupts. The comparison was universal, and in that universality lay the moral. Leadership isn't about the noise you make when you're cornered, it's about the discipline to stand on truth, even when the world shakes around you. By the end of the month, headlines still blazed, hearings loomed, and debates raged on. But for many Americans, the defining memory had already crystallized. Obama steady, reading from a paper. Trump lashing out as if the truth itself were an attack. Years later, people would still remember where they were when they saw it, not for the numbers in the report, not even for the political fallout, but for what it revealed about character. That's the life lesson worth holding on to. Power may shout, but integrity whispers, and people know the difference. So if you're watching this, take that with you. In your workplace, in your home, in your community, choose calm truth over loud denial. Because history doesn't reward who yells the most. It rewards who stands firm when it matters. And if you want more stories like this, moments that make US pause and reflect on what leadership really means, make sure to subscribe. That way, you'll never miss the lessons hiding inside the headlines.